John, thanks for speaking to us on Sportsvibe TV. Obviously here for the Milwaukee Bucks New York Knicks game on Thursday. Firstly, how do you see the game going?
I mean, there's no point in sugarcoating it. The Knicks are as bad as they've been. I've said to a couple of people that if I were a member of the Knicks team, I would be using this opportunity away from disgruntled fans, away from the bulk of the New York press, and in a completely clean slate environment at a neutral court. I would use this game to try and re-kickstart my season. That's what's going to happen at best. But if I'm Milwaukee, I'm thinking, let's get this game over with in the first half. So there's kind of the player in me thinks that that's what should happen. Milwaukee should try and devastate, run them off the floor in the first half. But obviously, from a spectator's point of view, I'm kind of hoping for a contest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you've sort of brought up my next question there. It's a regular season game, obviously, in the NBA. Do you think the players see it that way with the scale of the event and the location, or do you think it changes their mindset before the game, their approach?
No, I mean, I think it's the same. You have to remember, with every game, there's the same. It's unusual rigmarole for us because there's a regular season game here. So there's activation of press that wouldn't normally be activated. There's interest from people who would normally have to watch it at 2 o'clock in the morning. But for the players, it's the exact same process. And they don't see the behind the scenes stuff. So they just see, is the bus on time? Is if there's a journey to get here, but it's not a particularly long journey. With the tailwinds that's been happening, it's 5.5 hours. That's less time than it takes to get from Orlando to Portland. So I think they see it just as a regular season game. Get on with it, get it done, and then get back to the next.
Yeah, well, obviously you're still involved in events like this with broadcasting. Obviously it's not the same as playing, so do you ever miss playing on big events such as this?
I mean, I am saddened by the fact that while I played, this was a distant memory. People were just starting to talk about global games. They hadn't even thought of the name global games, but they just started talking about, I remember David Stern coming up to me after a game in Orlando and saying, in a couple of years we'll be playing in England. And of course, I was a couple of years, and then another couple of years, and I was in Utah, and another couple of years in Houston, and then the first game happened the moment I retired. So I'm saddened that I couldn't have participated in this while I played, but I'm an old man now. I'm a fat old man. I'm too old to be jealous.
Yeah, that sort of involves my next question. How much do you think events like this achieve in trying to raise the profile of the game in England specifically?
I think there's great exposure of the NBA in terms of a cultural brand already. You walk down the streets and there are tons of people wearing NBA gear, hats and jerseys and whatever else, shoes of players. But I think games like this help people to realize just how quick, just how powerful, just how amazing the athletes who play in the league are. And it changes it from being just like a cultural phenomenon to an actual sporting phenomenon. And I think that's an important transition. It helps people see something to aspire to, especially in this country where there's a real desert out there in basketball in terms of things to aspire to. There are very few peaks in a world full of basketball troughs in this country. So this game gives people an opportunity to see where they want to go, the pinnacle. And so it's really important, yeah.
Obviously you featured for England at the Commonwealth Games, came out of retirement for that. Do you think British basketball does enough for players that are eligible, they play in the NBA, do you think they do enough to convince them to play for their country?
I mean, every player that was British played in the Olympics, and a lot of players who were what we would call a plastic Brit in almost any other sport. We don't have that many people. Joel Freeland was the last kind of proper British kid, born and brought up here and goes over to America and played for a year with Portland. The problems here are infrastructure. We don't do enough for any player. I could walk out right now outside, walk through London, and I could find within the course of 2 hours a team's worth of people who are more physically talented than I could ever hope or dream to have been. These players within the course of 7 years for the men's team and maybe 6 years for the women's team could be part of a phenomenal Olympic squad that could medal. That doesn't happen because we've got terrible leadership in the sport for the most part. We've got non-existent infrastructure for the most part. Facilities are too expensive when they do exist, and coaching is abysmal. You know, the NBA is doing all it can in terms of it comes here, it inspires, it fills players with hope, and then they turn around and they try and find somewhere to play to get better, and it doesn't exist. At some point, that's our responsibility to address. And then the NBA will have an even more amazing impact on Britain in those visits, because there'll actually be a pathway for kids to follow.
Obviously, since retiring, you've moved into broadcasting, you've gone for a PhD in psychology. Do you think it's important for players post-retirement to have further career goals?
I know some players who don't do much now, and they're perfectly happy. They spend time with their children. Some of them are stay-at-home dads, you know, while their wives do stuff, while their partners do stuff. And I'm perfectly happy for that. I just think there are players for whom they don't make enough money in their career, or that money is frittered and gone, or even they just, I think sometimes people just need direction. And after a life spent so structured in the NBA, and it's really structured in the NBA, you know, practice, certain types of food, yet more practice, conditioning drills, physiotherapy, you name it, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. To end up in a world where they've got no direction, no real purpose, it's really tough. So transition is important. Everybody should have something that they wake up really wanting to do, especially after you've done a job like playing professional basketball. You shouldn't be in a position where the thing that you have to do, or the thing that you're doing after that career, fills you with dread. I love my job now. I'm probably better at it than I was at basketball, but that just means I'm really good at it.
Well, yeah, I think that wraps it up nicely. So thank you for talking to Sportsvibe, John.
It's a pleasure.